Hey, what up there, YouTube land? Dan here, aka the Comic Concierge, continuing my look at all the Infinite Frontier books, this time taking a look at The Joker #1, written by James Tynion with art by Gillian March. And if I'm being honest, this was not a book I was highly anticipating. I, like most people, just like the Joker in smaller doses, and we've been getting a lot of him lately. And ultimately, if you give me a bunch of characters I'd like to see series by, the Joker isn't necessarily on there. However, I think it's important never to dismiss something just based upon concept alone. If someone asked you a decade ago that they wanted to make a hip hop musical about Alexander Hamilton, you'd say that person is crazy. And now it's an artistic masterpiece, one of the best works of our generation. So you never know where something great can come from. Something that seems odd or unique or stupid on paper may end up becoming something amazing. Now, sometimes it ends up being awful, and people's initial response was the correct response. Well, what happens with the Joker? Like I said, I wasn't super anticipating this, so what were my final thoughts when I finally read it? Well, they were that it was fine, ultimately. Honestly, those are the hardest comics I have to review, are those that are just there, that are middle of the road, that are just fine. It's like drinking a room temperature glass of water. I'm not more thirsty, though, so I guess it achieved its ultimate goal, but it's not something that I really, am clamoring for, and don't have much to say about that. But it'd be really boring review if I just said it was fine and moved on from there. So let me try to dive a little bit deeper so I can figure out, well, why is it just fine? Why isn't it something I am clamoring more for? Am I dismissing it just based upon my initial thoughts? I don't necessarily think so. I'm pretty open-minded when I come to my reviews, at least I like to think I am. But ultimately, when I look at this story, although it says the Joker, it really isn't a Joker story, and I didn't necessarily anticipate it to be. This is James Gordon's story, and being a fan of the Year One is probably my favorite Batman book, which is very much similar, where it's Batman's story part of the time, Gordon's story part of the time. I can see where they're coming from with this. And it starts off if we get a flashback of Gordon's life as working with this detective that looks like Andrew Sipowicz if he let himself go. He's got ketchup on his shirt, he's overweight. He's telling the story of the first time he saw pure evil and how it's been holding him down because he let that person get away. It was this person that was eating someone else, and he's been trying to find that person ever since. And clearly setting the stage of the idea of evil and allowing it to fester and how it continually stays with you. And I kind of like that idea. Ultimately, what we see here is James Gordon is no longer the commissioner of Gotham. He's this more like a liaison, really working with the government here and there, but not necessarily in an official role. But recently there was a disaster at Arkham Asylum caused by the Joker, where a lot of convicts were killed, and now they're kind of out to get him, not just because of that, because all of the chaos he's been causing, and they're thinking they maybe want him to be the czar of this run. Are they really all that concerned about getting the Joker? He seems to be gone. Maybe they want him gone. Also, what we're seeing is Gordon visiting some of his past demons that are still with him. His relationship with his daughter is still all types of messed up. His son is now dead. He's just in a really bad place right now, and lingering all over this is the presence of the Joker. And when you think about it, ultimately, we always think Batman and the Joker, but Gordon has a lot of reasons to hate the Joker just as much as Batman, if not more. His arch nemesis may in fact be the Joker. But what happens is a mysterious stranger shows up giving Gordon a proposal, and it's one to perhaps take out the Joker in ways that he agrees with or maybe disagrees with, and that's ultimately our conflict. There's maybe a hint that there is something else notorious happening with the Joker in the background. When you look at this story, ultimately, it's your bare bones type of noir setup. You have the over-the-hill PI who has kind of burned so many bridges. All of his past demons are still lingering with him. His personal relationships are all messed up. But the one thing that kind of sets things in motion is a femme fatale comes into his presence, giving him an offer that he doesn't fully agree with, but is intrigued by. But clearly there is some nefarious reasoning behind what she is doing. She clearly is not exactly what she says to be. And I think there's not really much more to it than that. So if you're a person going into this thinking, like, I want a Joker story, and Tynion's obviously a great horror writer and getting a more horror vibe, you're not necessarily getting that. And if you're a crime fan like myself, you're ultimately just kind of getting a story that you've seen before. And I don't necessarily mind seeing stories before. Ultimately, a lot of crime stories are very tropish. but what is the hook here? Like, what is the different take that they're going to make this all that more exciting? And I don't necessarily see it yet. There are some elements that I think they can build upon. One of the bits I enjoyed the most was actually seeing how the citizens of Gotham are kind of making these past villains into these icons, really. They're kind of worshiping them, from Bane to Punchline to even Joker. And these people that should be outcast are now being seen as kind of the rebels without a cause, people that are speaking out for those that don't have a voice. And I do see some meta commentary with those moments in the creation of this book itself, right? Where this is a book about a villain, and where we want the villain to be the most interesting part. We're, in a way, kind of making them the protagonist of this story, like those people are, despite us knowing everything that's wrong with them. And if they can approach that meta commentary even further, expand upon it with even more vigor and depth in the next issues, this could be something more developed than your typical type of crime drama. And I do actually think the idea of taking your tropish crime setup and then throwing the Joker into it and seeing what happens could be fun. We just don't get a lot of that in this issue. So as a first issue, there really isn't a lot here that I'm super excited about. But like I said, there are bits and pieces that they can expand upon and really develop into something that it's more than just your general story that, like I said, was just ultimately fine. And when I look at the art, I thought the art, again, was similar to the book. It was good. It did its job. It reminded me a lot of the styles like you get with like a Steve Epting or Michael Lark. Not your typical superhero book. It does fit the tone of this story. I thought some of the creations and some of the designs to show the presence of Joker and how he is this nightmare that cannot die were rather effective. I also wanted to call out colors Arif Prianto, because I think the colors are some of the best ways of keeping the presence of the Joker throughout the book, despite the fact he's not really there in many of the scenes and many of the panels. You see these purple and pink hues that are just subtle enough in the background, so his presence is always there. And in places where those colors aren't naturally there, his atmosphere is just soaking into the world, where his touch is everywhere, and Gordon just can't get around it. I thought that was a great way of hinting at that without making it super obvious. And although I liked the art, there were times I thought it was a little inconsistent. The detail would get washed out. You would get these establishing shots that just did more to take you out than bring you in. And I think that is the difference between an artist like a Steve Epting or a Michael Lark, where you don't get those, where everything remains consistent in where you end up and where you are throughout the story. Even the shots that aren't necessarily the most exciting are still executed pretty well. So can I recommend this book? That's a hard question to answer, to be honest. Like I said, it's ultimately fine. There's nothing in this book I think is all that awful or all that bad, or I think is executed poorly. But there's nothing there that I also say was executed to a level where you're excited to read the next issue. So if you're also looking for a Joker story, I could see you not liking the fact that he doesn't really show up until the very end, maybe. And then I could also see those like myself who like crime and it would be excited for a Gordon story, just wishing that maybe we got something akin to that of, Gotham Central again, that I think did a better job of approaching similar themes and ideas, but doing it in a more complete and with a perspective that wasn't just kind of taking Sam Spade's story and throwing it in Gordon's lap. I am going to continue with issue number 2, mostly because I'm doing this reviews, but also I do want to see what Joker's presence does to mess things up a bit, which is, I would say, one thing it did effectively is want me to see more Joker, which is not something I think I've said out loud probably since watching Batman 89 or The Dark Knight. The 2 reviews into Infinite Frontier, and both are rather lukewarm. Not the greatest start personally, but I wonder what other people are really thinking. I've been trying to avoid all types of reviews until I've done my own and giving my own thoughts, but what are you liking about Infinite Frontier? What are you not liking? If you went into Joker wanting to see Joker, did this issue disappoint you? Did you love it? Am I off base? I'd really like to have a discussion down in the comments below just to see what people are thinking, because I don't know. I haven't really seen a general conversation really about Infinite Frontier yet. I think people are still just talking about Future State. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. We shall see. But anyways, just remember, comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for watching.